Welcome to Divine Downloads. I'm your host, Cassandra One, and today's episode is all about my third trimester. Oh my God, so many of you have really responded to these pregnancy updates, and I really appreciate that because honestly, when I first started out giving these updates, I was like, I don't know if anybody cares, if anybody really wants to know, but I love talking about both the real experiences I've had during this pregnancy, as well as the spiritual lessons and the perspective that as someone that is, a spiritual student and a spiritual teacher on this path, going through this very human experience of becoming a mother, what I've learned. And so many of you have reached out and let me know that you resonate with it. And if you are a mom or if you're looking to become a mom in the next few years, it's really just helped you. So thank you. Thank you for your feedback. It really does mean a lot to me. And it is the reason why I've kept up with these updates. So third trimester, oh my God, it's like the home stretch now. As I'm recording this, we are at 37 weeks. So baby can come whenever. Full gestation is 40. And so my due date is May 28th, or due date range rather, which they like to do now, is May 28th to May 31st. But technically, at this point, it would be safe for him to come whenever. So it's kind of wild living in this space of it could happen any moment. It could happen tomorrow, or it could not happen for 4 weeks. Can we just talk about how much that is the lesson for manifesting and for calling in things in our life? I think before I even get into some of the other stuff about earlier in the third trimester, one of the things that's been so potent for me recently is seeing how much the pregnancy gestation journey and our manifestation journey go hand in hand, and how a lot of these same concepts that I've talked about for years in my books and in my teachings feel like they're coming through full circle with this baby. First off, the concept of really just having this conception moment, right? Where you have this desire. Well, actually, it's the desire comes before the conception, right? The desire to have a child or the desire to manifest whatever you want. So you have this moment where the desire pops into your field. And like I said, whether it's to have a child or it's to manifest a new book deal or a husband or whatever it is you're calling in, right? And then you go on the journey to the conception moment. And a lot of that journey is also realizing all the resistance that you have to that desire, even really implanting. And so I think this is something that I talk about a lot in Divinely Design Your Life, but was a very real experience that you guys have heard about in the first trimester podcast about me really looking at all the parts of me that was scared to become a mom, or maybe didn't want to become a mom, which again, totally links up to manifesting anything. Even though sometimes when we want something, and again, I talk about this a lot in my program called The Process, we can't imagine that there's even any parts of us that don't want the thing. We're like, no, I want $1 million. No, I want the husband. No, I want the book deal. No, I want the new house, whatever it is. We can't imagine that there's actually a part of us that doesn't want it. But the truth is that there almost always is, because we're humans. So it's looking at what part of us is even a teeny bit resistance to this. What part of us associates any level of pain with this, right? And so I think there's a previous podcast where I talked about this in my money journey, about how when I wanted to get to that next income level, I had to look at the pain I associated with being at that next income level. And on a surface level, it was so easy to say there'd be no pain. But in reality, there was going to be pain. There was going to be having to deal with more people asking me for money, having to deal with how do I say no to people when they ask me for money, when I actually have the money and I can't use the excuse that I don't have the money anymore, right? There were different elements that I really needed to unpack and unravel. And I think it's been the same as you guys have heard in my conception journey. So I'm not going to go too deep into that because I think I covered a lot of that in the first trimester podcast. But that kind of leads us to this conception moment where we really like kind of clear the runway a bit to actually fully implant the desire to manifest. And then we're into the gestation period, which I would say most of us are in a gestation period of some desire or another at any given time. And this is when you've had the desire, you've, had that conception moment where you've really like locked it in, you've implanted it, like I'm doing this, I'm going for this is happening, right? And then you kind of have to trust. It's this beautiful practical magic, as I talk about dance, of the outward aligned actions you can take, which like keep your environment good, right? When you're pregnant, it's like, are you taking your supplements? Are you eating enough protein? Are you drinking enough water? Are you, taking your birth classes? Are you going on walks? Whatever it is, right? Taking care of your mental health. Are you doing all the environmental work while trusting that like the real juicy work is actually being done without your hands ever being on it, right? The building of your body is literally building another human. And you only have so much you can do. And so for people like me that are very like outwardly action oriented, you have to know that there's like, all you can do is what you can do. And you have to know when you have to just kind of relinquish control and trust and really fall into that surrender. And that's the same thing in manifesting and in life, right? Where it's like, all you can do, you have to wait for, there's a divine process that's going on through you when you're calling something in, right? When something is being formed for you. And, whether it's a book or a baby or a financial goal or a partnership, right? You can show up and be the most available person for that in all the earthly ways and aligned actions you can take. And it has its own timeline. It has its own divine process that is being done without your grubby hands on it that you have to acknowledge. And you have to be willing to allow. And I think as someone that I can say, I'm like a Capricorn 10th house, Capricorn Venus. I like having a process, having a plan, trudging up the mountain. I'm not afraid of taking the action steps I need to accomplish my goals. Where sometimes I have to really consciously intercept myself is allowing myself that space and that trust and that surrender to like be taking aligned action, but also not be pushing so much action that I'm trying to overcompensate for not having access to the divine process that's going on, right? For trusting the timing. And I think for many of you guys that have listened to my stories over the years that have followed along, there are so many stories, even in my work around my book. I literally just finished a podcast interview before this. And afterwards, we were just riffing, talking about kind of publishing and books and editors and stuff. And I was telling her how, with my second book, I actually had shopped. When you shop, it's like your agent kind of puts a book proposal to a bunch of different publishers, and then they will take meetings with you and whatnot. So I had a bunch of different meetings for the second book that I had proposed. And I really didn't feel like any of these editors got it. Got what I was going for with the book. And it was really frustrating. And I had to surrender it. And it was when I really just I surrendered it. I was like, maybe it's not the time right now. Maybe the right person hasn't shown up that's meant to help me bring this on. And when I surrendered it and just kind of let it be for a bit, focused on my alignment, my spiritual practice, myself, all the other beautiful ways I got to share my message in the world. Then a few months later, I get an email kind of quote unquote out of the blue from an editor that was so in alignment with the message I wanted to share. And that book became Manifesting Through Meditation, right? And it happened so fast, and it was so aligned, and it was such an easy process once it clicked in. And now looking back, like through this pregnancy journey, I could describe that as me trying to birth a baby at 5 months pregnant, right? In my head, I was like, okay, well, I got pregnant. I know I'm pregnant. Like, like, let me just get this. Like, why isn't it done yet? And it's like, well, you don't want to birth the baby at 5 months pregnant if you can help it, right? Because the baby wants 9 months, 10 months, really, gestation to grow into full form. And so do our manifestations. And while on some levels, I think it can be easier a little bit with the baby because we have this kind of construct that sometimes between like 37 and 42 weeks, this little bub is going to arrive. With our manifestations, we don't get that exact time frame. We can trust, if we have faith and we're in our spiritual practice, that it is going to arrive, that it is going to happen. But we can't guarantee it, right? We can't guarantee it. And we have to be okay with not knowing the timeline of it. We need to be okay with taking care of what we can do in the waiting process. And so this third trimester, segue into the third trimester, has been kind of that, almost like that final embodiment stage before the manifestation fully enters our earthly reality, where you're checking your last boxes. You provided this environment for it. You've done all these things, and you're holding space. And also for me, it's been trying and actively being a participant in the conscious embodiment of earthly actions and energetic alignment around. One, I've had my earthly actions set up, and I'm going to release a whole other podcast. I recorded an entire podcast for you guys, all on kind of my maternity leave preparations as a solopreneur, running their own business, and kind of how I'm going into, my quote unquote maternity leave that I designed myself. Because when I was looking for inspiration, there was so little out there. I really couldn't find anything where anyone like really laid out. There was a lot of like very vague comments on it, but I wanted to lay it out because I know there's going to be other, you guys that are following me that run your own businesses, run small businesses, kind of maybe you're freelancing or whatnot. And we really have a unique situation where we have to create and just make all these decisions around our maternity leave. We get to decide how long we can be off for, how long we want to be off for, what things we want to keep going while we're on maternity leave, what things we don't, how we're going to handle that, the financial, situation around that, what you can do in your situation, which is something that, especially if you're like not pregnant yet and thinking about getting pregnant in the next 2 years, I would highly recommend thinking about, right? Do I want to create my own maternity leave fund so that I have, 3-6 months worth of expenses to keep my business running and to keep, everything that I need in my life running comfortably without me if I don't make more money during that time? Or do I want to set up, anyway, I don't want to get into all that in this podcast because like I said, it's coming for you in the next couple weeks if I haven't already aired it. Keep an eye out because it really is, anyway, I'm like, this is my pregnancy brain. I'm like, I recorded that for you, but that's been a big part of this third trimester too, is really, for me, that's been the earthly actions of okay, what do I really like want to get done for my game plan to feel set up in my business, in my home, setting up the nursery, setting up my little breastfeeding station, even ordering more like leisure outfits and breastfeeding outfits. So for me, it's really like we talk about in Divinely Design Your Life, the process about quantum embodiment, right? And how we're imagining ourselves in the next level, in the next evolution, and what are the cues around us, right? How do we show up? How do we take care of ourselves? How do we dress? What's our meditation practice like? What does our home look like? All these things, right? When you're manifesting anything is so powerful. So I've done that for this next journey into motherhood. And looking at that, trying to set up my house in a way that I know is going to make me feel expansive in that next journey, trying to make sure I have clothing. And, to some people that might be, like, I don't get it. I think on some level, like my husband doesn't really get it or whatnot, but he's chill with it. He respects me, around like, no, I want to have cute leisure outfits. And I stack them all along in my closet in like one section. So they're like really easily accessible. I can see them quickly, put them on. Because I know for me, like I'm wearing this cute little sundress for those of you that are watching this on YouTube right now. I'm wearing this cute little sundress today just to be at home, like recording podcast interviews and different things. And I'm not doing it because there's anybody specific that's going to see me, right? Like, yeah, I may go out, to like get a coffee or get lunch or whatever. I have no plans of it, but if I decided to, I will probably leave the house even just to take a walk. But I wear it for me. I wear it for me because I know that even though right now I'm in like the end of pregnancy and I'm feeling exhausted and I feel a little puffy in my face, and the little things that I can do for myself is get up, do my hair every day, do my skincare, put on an outfit that I feel is both cute and comfortable, right? And so I've been preparing a lot of stuff like that so that that's already there waiting for me on the other side. And I highly recommend that if you're in pregnancy right now, thinking about that stuff too, thinking about your little things. I even have one of my girlfriends who I read fiction, fantasy books with, has helped pick out a series of, that we're going to be reading together during my postpartum, right? So she's going to come over and like help support me with babe. And we're going to like listen to this book on audio out loud together, while we're kind of just like relaxing and chilling. And even things like that, having that set up, right? To have things that I'm like, okay, in this new reality, these are going to be things that also like reconnect me to like fun and joy and playfulness. And I'm sure there's going to be so much joy with the little baby. But I think having those moments, I've set up on, usually I have my altar and I have my meditation set up here in my office, but I probably won't be spending a lot of time up here during that first time. So I've created a mini altar on my bedside table. I've created another altar downstairs as well with for both me and for the baby. So I have my spaces, right, where I'll still be able to tune in. And I've made sure that my nightstand is stocked with kind of books that I want easily accessible to me. And so there's all these like kind of actions you can take in pre-preparation. And then there's also kind of tuning into that alignment, right? Where right now, and actually earlier than I expected in my third trimester. So the beginning of my third trimester was really interesting because I really didn't start showing until my third trimester. Like that's when like I really started looking and feeling pregnant and my bump was really like out. It wasn't really until my third trimester. And we had our baby moon, which we had our baby moon like the first week, I think, of my third trimester, which was literally the best thing ever. Highly, highly recommend. Highly recommend. We went to Bora Bora, and it was just lights out. Just lights out. We got little overwater bungalow, and I can't recommend it enough. I mean, not just Bora Bora. Bora Bora was incredible. If you can swing Bora Bora, go for it. But even if you can't swing Bora Bora, or it's just not practical for your life, going anywhere that's relaxing, that is really meant for you to kind of like lay down, be at the beach, like be there and like not have distractions of anything else to do with your partner before going into parenthood, I think is just so crucial. Me and P on that trip, I think, reconnected in a way that brought at least me, if not both of us, I'll just speak for myself, back to those initial stages of dating where we just had all this like unadulterated time with each other. We both had brought like books and different things. And we ended up spending so little time actually reading or doing any of the stuff we brought because we just forgot how nice it was to really disconnect from the world and, you know, talk about all the random things on our minds. Some of them having to do with baby, but a lot of them just not, right? And getting back into that like fun stage when you're like in the beginning of dating and you're just kind of like philosophers talking about like, what do you think about this? Or I was thinking about this, or, you know, I've always had this dream of doing this or whatever, and kind of being in a more playful, exploratory energy with each other. It was just the best. It was literally just such a gift. And I cannot sing the praises of a baby moon enough. I will say I had to do it in my third trimester because I was still traveling a lot for work events and coaching and consulting stuff up until the very end of my second trimester. If I would advise other people, I would say do it. I would do it more in the second trimester just for physical mobility. Once you start popping a little bit, you're just not as comfortable. But that being said, I was totally fine. It was great, but I think there's like a sweet spot in the second trimester that if you're planning it now, plan it for then. And so that was kind of the kickoff. And it was interesting. I had a moment, I've been so lucky with mostly feeling great physically during, the second and third trimester. I just had a week where all of a sudden I was experiencing all this pelvic pain, and I didn't know what was going on. And luckily my midwife referred me to a pelvic floor therapist. And after one session with her, we discovered it was literally just because my right like thigh was really tight, and the muscles were pulling my pelvis down on one side, and it was causing me pain. And like, how nuts is that? So we did this like, you know, deep massage on the inner and outer thigh on my right leg, and it like recalibrated everything. And then I kept up doing it. So I would use my little like Theragun at night and massage just like my thighs, inner and outer thighs, and quads and like my legs pretty much in general. And I haven't had any pain like that since. So that was a beautiful, you know, for anybody that's pregnant, that's having pain. I think sometimes our mind goes to like the craziest, worst things, and it's so easy when you're nervous. But how you hold your physical body is so important, and being able to like have those moments. The thing I've also learned about pregnancy that I think mirrors so much of our life and manifesting is that so much of the secret is in the relaxation, is in the release of tension, is in the letting go. And that starts on a physical level. Like, as much as I have been working out with a personal trainer, going on walks, like staying pretty active during my pregnancy, which I also recommend, I'm also doing like stretches every night. I'm using my Theragun. I'm making sure that I get body work, and I'm releasing tension as much as possible, because the pain often comes from tenseness, right? And tightness, whether that's from stress or how we're sitting or whatever it is, right? Similarly, during labor, from, and I'll like TBD, I'll do a podcast after I give birth. But from my studies, from all the courses I've taken and all the things, that same tension and that resistance during labor is what makes labor even more painful. Whereas like if we can relax, if we can open ourselves up, it helps make the journey smoother. Isn't that just like manifesting? When we're really trying to control, when we're really hustling, when we're really pushing, when we're forcing a thing, it feels so painful and often will take longer, just like labor. When we're allowing and we're relaxing and we're surrendering and we're trusting, right? And we're allowing all that tension to flow out of us, it's a much smoother ride, right? And often flows faster, both labor and manifesting. And I'll tell you about my lived in experience once we get there, but I could definitely stamp that for my lived in experience of manifestation. Because I feel like that's huge. And it's in those moments, just like going back to that book moment where I really was in such a place I was on a meditation retreat when that email came in, and I was in such a place of surrender and ease and relaxation around it. Whereas when I was actually having all those meetings and those calls, I was in such a push, like, this is my thing, I want to make it happen place. And how often that, usually does not work to our advantage. Other things about the third trimester, like I said, third trimester is really like when you are, I think, sitting with the fact that, wow, this is really happening. I don't know if I'm sure other people have had this experience, but sometimes I wonder to myself, am I the only like crazy person that, really, I think it really sunk in that I was having a baby this trimester. It really like landed once, I stopped traveling as much, once I started putting in my maternity leave plan, once I started getting the house ready, once I started, researching pediatricians and coming up with my birth plan and my preferences and making sure he has, I have all the supplies ready for when he's born and that he has the clothes and all the things, right? Washing the clothes, getting my clothes, getting his diapers, getting my diapers, all the things. It really has grounded it into reality. And yet there is still this just, I think, deeply spiritual part about pregnancy and the journey from maiden to mother, where as much as you prepare, there's this acknowledgement, I think, in this deep inner knowing that you can never fully be prepared. And that, going into labor and becoming a mom, having him earthside here, will be like jumping off a cliff. And trusting that I can find my footing on the way down. And so really allowing myself to sink into that trust, allowing myself to be okay in the unknown, which I think is this kind of final trimester of really acknowledging that it's been really hard for me, honestly, as someone that's such a go-getter and so like manifestation driven and goal driven, to accept that while I'm still acknowledging the desires that I have for my life and professionally and all that stuff for the upcoming year, and the desires are still kind of showing themselves to me in there's a very clear knowing that, one, they could very well change when this shift happens, and maybe something else will come up and I'll be guided. I've heard from so many of my friends who have had children recently that, 3 months postpartum, their trajectory was like totally shifted, and the ideas that they maybe had for their business or whatnot going into having the baby were totally changed, and different creative ideas and different inspiration came to them on the flip side, right? And so it's really just sitting with this surrender of knowing that there's only so much aligned action you can do, and there's only so much pre-planning you can do. And then for me, I will say, and because I'm a big advocate for in life and manifesting and all that, taking the aligned actions, is that I think when you take a certain amount of aligned actions, it can give you the peace to fully surrender even deeper. To say, okay, well, I've done the basics. I've checked off the boxes, right? You know, for instance, if maybe you're not a baby, maybe it's not a baby for you, maybe it's the book thing, right? Have you written the proposal, right? Have you written the book proposal? Because if you're telling people that you want a book for forever, but you've never written the book proposal, then I would venture to say that you haven't completed aligned earthly actions. So how could you, I mean, you can absolutely just surrender and hope like something jumps off to you. But for me, having completed the obvious earthly actions, whether it's like writing that book proposal, whether it's, you know, if you want to start a business, like creating a website, creating offerings, you know, hanging your shingle, so to speak, in some form or another, then it allows you to sit back into more of that surrender, right? So for me, having done kind of these like basic checklists of things I need to do before baby comes has allowed me to linger in deeper and deeper, deeper, deeper surrender. And I think fully release, which is one of the things that was important to me before going into birth, because I wanted to be able to know that I have done my part. I've done my part in preparing for the best, and who knows what's to come, and what that journey is going to look like, what the labor journey is going to look like, what having him here is going to be like. I've never experienced any of that before. But the beautiful thing about going into the unknown is that anything is possible. When nothing is certain, everything is possible. And so that's become like a real mantra for me recently, of just really owning that I could be scared of the not knowing, or I can actually lean into it and say, what a freaking blessing this not knowing is. Because going into this space of not knowing what could happen also means I'm going into a place where I feel like there's more potential and possibility than ever before. Like literally anything could happen, right? And how exciting is it to focus on the fact that there will be shifts. And I've thought about this with myself, and I've had like, I think, intuitions perhaps of possibilities of what could happen. And one of the ones that I'll just share with you that I think is maybe a little vulnerable, maybe might be shocking to some of you, I don't know. But as a Capricorn moon, Capricorn Venus, there is a part of me that I think has been a little bit more emotionally conservative. And if you talk to some of my husband or like some of my good friends, like it's funny because I attract sometimes people that are like very like loving and emotional and whatnot. And it's not that I'm not like loving, but I am loving. I'm just not as like overtly emotional, I guess. And so one of the things that I suspect could happen, I don't know if it will, but is like even deeper of a heart opening in that way, and an even deeper access to being able to connect on that level. And it's not like, I don't want to say this, it sounds like I'm like a sociopath or something without emotions. It's not true. I will just say that I happen to have people around me who are so vocal about their love and affections and emotions. And I've just not been that. I've been a person that, I feel deeply, but I kind of just handle it myself. And I don't know. I feel like there's a new emotional unlocking. I'll just leave it at that. I feel like my words are not doing doing justice to what I'm trying to communicate. But with that emotional unlocking, like, who knows what that's going to mean for my next book? Who knows what that's going to mean for my next professional endeavors? I've heard from a lot of moms, which I'm really excited about, which has already happened in pregnancy, which I think one of the best, one of the gifts of pregnancy, and I've heard about motherhood, is like deep prioritization. Is that in pregnancy, I can say, especially this last trimester, the last few weeks, I will say, once I got into like past 30 weeks or so, I've had more exhaustion, and it's not every day, but I definitely don't have the fuel tank I have normally had. And some days I can be really, really, really tired and just like need to rest and need to cocoon. And I think part of that is because there's this beautiful liminal space that you're in at the end of pregnancy, where I really feel like you're in between worlds, where part of you is in earth and part of you is kind of in the great beyond, like going to fetch your baby and connecting to this like beautiful miracle that's going to move through you. And so your time is so different and precious and sacred, and you want to be really conscious of how you spend it. And so I've been really conscious about, who I want to see, how I'm going to see them, what work I want to do, how much work I'm available to do every day. And, the past, next week, I'm fully going on maternity leave. But even leading up to that, like full exit or whatever for a few months, I have the past, like earlier than I planned on having to do it. I thought I would still be able to work way more than I have the past few weeks. And I've really realized that I have maybe like 2 to 3 hours a day that I want to work. And then I don't. And then I'm like going on walks, and then I'm meditating, and then I'm like doing stuff around the house and wanting that space, because there's so many things like energetically going on right now that I'm moving through. And that has been just a great discerner. It's been really clear when things are like, yes, I want to do that, and that's worth my time and energy right now, and I want to be surrounded, with that person or help that client or whatever. And then also really clear when I'm like, no, just like not available for that. And so I've heard that from some of my friends, that early motherhood will bring that to a whole different level. But I love that. I think discerning and another like kind of phrase that I feel like has just been like in the conscious awareness lately, that I've seen so many people say, that I feel like is coming through a lot for me as well, is the simplify to amplify. And while I haven't figured out exactly like specific what my simplify is, I know that that's what's coming. I know that that's a part of what's coming, is allowing myself to simplify more and more and more, so that I'm really refined and really aligned and really connected. And that's why, I did a couple solo casts ago, an episode about aligning, your life, and how using that conscious lifestyle design assessment bundle and my course, the realignment, going through these like 8 different areas of your life to really like clear out what's not working and only have space for what is aligned, and how that kind of just opens this portal and opens this floodgate to manifesting more of what you're calling in and what you're really aligned with. That's been my process in the 3rd trimester, which is why I shared so much about that. And I'll include the links below as well if you're curious about that. But that's the process that I've actually done this trimester. It was like looking through my spiritual practice, my wellness practice, my career, my house, my friendships, all different things, and like what's aligned, what's not aligned with me in this current season. And I'm sure that there'll be an even deeper refining of that on the flip side, when baby is earth side. So yeah, so that's a lot, been a lot about third trimester. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. As far as like, yeah, I definitely feel like I'm smuggling a watermelon. It definitely feels like I'm smuggling a watermelon. It's slightly uncomfortable to sleep, but I've still been sleeping a lot, thank goodness. And it's wild. It's really wild to feel this like now pretty much fully formed baby in my womb, moving around, kicking, doing his thing. And to know that, any day now, I'll be meeting him. And I'm really excited about it. So thanks for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. I hope that, it hit you at some place on your journey. If you have any questions for me, head on over to the YouTube version of this video, and leave it in the comments. Or if you're listening to this on one of the podcast platforms, feel free to hit me up at Cassandra Bodzak on Instagram. If you have some questions, and, maybe I'll compile a bunch of the questions that I have over all the pregnancy episodes and do another frequently asked questions episode in my postpartum period. I'm kind of leaving it open and allowing myself to have so much juicy content. Trust me, one of the delights of this last trimester is that I have done a bunch of different interviews for Divine Downloads in preparation so that you'll still be getting episodes every week. And it's really been fun. And it's been like lighting me up because I reached out to, a bunch of different people that had kind of been in my world and maybe wanted to be on the podcast before. I had wanted them to be on, but I just hadn't been in a season of recording a bunch of different new interviews yet. So I've filled these like last weeks of my work before maternity leave with all of these incredible interviews. And it's been beautiful because while my body is physically tired right now, doing these interviews has actually like given me so much energy and been so fun and like kind of just like a light energizing way to kind of finish out these last few weeks. So get excited, get excited for all the juicy content. And then at some point post-birth, I'll pop on with an updated solo cast about my birth journey and about how, early motherhood is going. So you can look out for that. But don't forget, as always, under every episode, no matter where you're listening to it, on YouTube, iTunes, wherever podcasts you love, I have links below for all the free goodies. So that conscious lifestyle design assessment that I talked to you about, you can jump into that. I have my free Divinely Design Your Life meditation bundle. You can jump into that, as well as all sorts of different resources. So make sure you take advantage of that. I will be also sending love notes through my newsletter to my community. So if you're on the newsletter, again, there's a link below, or if you download either the Conscious Lifestyle Design Assessment or the meditation bundles, you'll get included on the newsletter as well, so that you can keep up with me while I'm away during my new mom period. Thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate you being here and being a part of this community.